Good morning.
Morning.
Nice to have you. I'm admitting a few more few more into here who are coming in.
Blaine
Um,
is on, by the way.
sounds good. Nice for you to join us, Blaine.
All right. Nice to see you guys.
So, as we get started, I'm Aaron Gregory. I'm the Chief of Diversity for Arlington Public Schools. We are here today, and we're talking about Let's Talk. And the Let's Talk will be around social media and engagement, activism, citizenship, and it's really to encourage your voice and your student voice and allow you all to be heard today and to be able to ask questions. We have an esteemed panel of guests that will be introduced to you that will be able to give you some insight into their journey with social media and activism and citizenship. As we get started, I wanted to introduce our moderator for the day, Lynn Borton. Miss Borton has actually been, she has a radio show and a radio station here that she is the host of. And she will tell you more about that in the programming. So I'm going to turn it over to her without further ado so that we can make sure that we have enough time to be able to answer questions for you.
Great. Well, welcome everyone. Good morning. It's great to see this growing group. That's really fun. So we're excited to have you join us for a conversation about curiosity and citizenship. Now, you might have thought that we were going to be talking about social media, but actually social media is just another way of telling the world who you are and what matters to you and learning those things about other people as well. And coming at that with curiosity is probably the best way to manage social media in the world today. So we have this great panel of people who have gotten curious about their passions, and they are using social media in constructive and responsible ways as active citizens. So I want to invite them to give a quick introduction so you know who you're hearing from. And we'll do this in about 1 minute each. We're going to be really quick. Jimena, let's start with you.
Hi, I am Jimena Herzog, and I am the founder of Fund to Action. It's a digital platform for grassroots activism and civic engagement. And I am originally from Santiago, Chile, and I live now in Virginia, Northern Virginia. Thank you for having me.
Thank you. Blaine, let's go to you next.
Yeah, hi, I'm Blaine Shigeta. I am a rising junior at Washington Liberty High School. I am a co-founder of youth organization Generation Ratify, and we work to ratify the Equal Rights Amendment. And I'm really excited to be here too.
Great. Yolandi, you're next.
Awesome. My name's Yolandi Quinana. I have been living in Arlington here for about 4 years. I'm the co-founder of Arlington for Justice, and we focus on police reform here in Arlington. Thanks.
And Eric, how about you?
Yes, good morning, everyone. So glad to see the students on board also. Eric Troy, founder and CEO of Aficionado. I'm based in Columbus, Ohio, and I do extensive work in working with students and educators in the area of education, sports marketing, and social justice. And glad to be a part of the call.
Great. And of course, you've already met Aaron Gregory, our host for this program and others. I hope you participated in some of the earlier Let's Talk, and I hope that this is so interesting that you can't wait for the next opportunity to join us again. Right. So thank you, Aaron, for putting this together and making it possible. So today is not about a particular worldview or a particular political angle. This is about how we choose to show up as citizens and how and where and with whom we invest our time and attention, because your time and your attention is like the most valuable thing that you have. You can replace stuff, you can replace money, you can never replace your time and your attention. So how you learn to invest that and invest that wisely is a great thing to be internalizing right now. So in the Arlington Public Schools, the vision is to be an inclusive community that empowers all students to foster their dreams, explore their possibilities, and create their futures. And we're hoping we can help you do that. Another way of putting that is that we want to empower you as active citizens. We want you to be engaged in causes that matter to you, whatever those causes are. And there are two values at APS that we're really going to draw on today. One is inclusivity, strengthening our community by valuing people for who they are, nurturing our diversity, and embracing the contributions of all students, families, and staff. And integrity, building trust by acting honestly, openly, ethically, and respectfully. And those are really important when it comes to social media. So we want to explore that vision through our relationship with social media today. It's hard to imagine life without social media in this world. So much of the information we're exposed to comes from social media, and how we even think about citizenship is shaped by social media every day. So how do you bring curiosity to that? Curiosity about the issues that are emerging around us, curiosity about our feelings about those issues, curiosity about how others think and use social media, curiosity about how we want to show up in the world. So, of course, I'm a fan of curiosity. I hope you are too. And I want to invite you to ask questions. I love questions. Everybody on this panel loves questions. And we want to encourage you to share your thoughts. You can do that in the chat or by raising your hand. And all of the panel are going to help me out and sort of watching for people who indicate, I've got something to say or I've got something to ask, because we really want to encourage that. You can also do it in the chat, so you can type things out and we'll watch for that too. So maybe you want to do that. Maybe that's more comfortable than speaking up at first. Either way is great. What we really want is for you to feel like you can ask questions, raise your voice. That's what this whole project is about. It's helping you find your voice and then raising it. So I want to start actually by asking you, as kind of a little test run here, who do you think is, where do you think most of the world's activism comes from? Take a wild guess. Put something in the chat. Where do you think most of the world's activism starts? Who does it start with? Take a guess. Okay, Aaron, I can't see the chat, so you got to tell me if anybody's typing anything in.
Not yet. We're still waiting.
Come on. Anything. Give a wild guess. Doesn't matter. We're not going to, nobody's being judged. Nobody's being graded.
Okay, we have one. I said, I think it starts with a problem.
It starts with a problem.
Yeah.
That is a great point. Actually, activism absolutely starts with a problem. People recognizing that there's something that they don't like about what's going on. What else?
Oppression. Oppression was another answer.
Oppression.
By Lolita.
Okay, yeah. Yeah, again, recognizing that maybe the world isn't as fair as we thought it ought to be, right? Those realizations, that curiosity about the world around us, that's absolutely where activism starts. But I want to turn to Jimena, because as a woman in science and technology, she's something of a rarity. And she's actually done some research on this question about who innovates and who makes change happen. So, Jimena, can you tell us about who the first true activists are?
Yes, absolutely. Can you see what the screen says?
Yes.
Yes, we see youth leading the way.
Youth are leading the way. So that has been the reality for activism always. Since ever that we have had some kind of problem, youth have been the first one reacting to the problem. And that's important for all of the students to know and to hear, because there will be times where you will feel whether it is your place or not to engage. And the answer is yes, it is. There has been always someone around your age, maybe in the past a little bit older, who has done this. And you know, it's incredibly important to consider the voices of youth, because almost third of the world is made by youth, because just under 15 is 26%. So if you include anyone under 18, it really gets around 31%. So it's really important that we know, and you know, how your presence in the world by numbers alone is clear. You're not just a small number, you are a third of the world. And here in the US alone, there are 74 million youth under 18. I am from Chile originally, and Chile has only 18 million people. So you could feel Chile entirely. All the kids in the US could just run Chile and feel it 4 times. That's how many youth we have here in the US. And you always hear that, you're digital natives. And maybe for you, it's not as impressive as it is for the rest of us, but we didn't grow up, we didn't have a lot of the things that you have. We didn't have a cell phone like you have today. We were not born with those. And we got to know them later when they were invented. I remember exactly when the iPhone 1 came out. I was a school principal, and we were all looking at it like, what the heck is this? So it's very interesting for us. It's incredibly powerful for you. And 80% of kids, can you see that the 80% of kids under 17 in the US have some kind of social media?
Actually, no, can you put your presentation in presentation mode and then change to the next slide?
Can you see now?
We see the main slide right now. Youth are leading the way.
Okay.
If you advance it.
Yeah, I keep advancing it, but it's not. Okay. Let me do it again.
Yeah, let's try to share.
Rule number 1 about technology: it's great until it isn't.
You see there?
Yeah,
we're still seeing your desktop and your first slide.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. I use normally other ones. I don't use Zoom, so I'm sorry about that. It's still the same?
Still the same with the desktop. It's showing the desktop and showing the slide deck on the side, but it's not advancing.
Okay. Okay, let's move on to another question, and then so we can come back maybe to this later. But the bottom line here is that it is not, what's most important is that that you don't have to be somebody else, that you don't have to, that the world has a lot of, at this time, moment and opportunity for you to be involved. And we're always looking at Greta, we're always looking at, other youth out there that are maybe leading the way that you see them in the news, but not every leader is actually a face leader. Like a lot of people that have made a difference in the past, there are people who probably don't even know their names. And you have to remember that following a pack is not necessarily leadership. Sometimes it's actually defending your own stories, your own personal values, those things that you generally don't think that anybody's going to be following up, or it's not the popular cause. Right now, everybody may be going one way. You may like that, and that's great because you're part of something, but there will be times when what you believe in is not what everybody else does. And you have to remember that your stories, your personal stories, and your values are very important. So the question was, Lynn, who is leading the way? The youth have been leading the way historically always, but what's different now is that they're younger. They're school age. They're not college age like it was in the past. Most of the activism that we see today are from youth under 18.
Great. And Blaine, you're one of those young people that Jimena is talking about. So you helped found Generation Ratify, which helped to get the Equal Rights Amendment passed here in Virginia. Congratulations. That was a long time in coming. What inspired you to do that? And how have technology and social media helped or been involved in that process with you?
So Generation Ratify was I've kind of been involved in activism since middle school. Kind of like Jimena said, there's a lot of activism happening in the middle school age for now. And I think my passion in general for activism started in my civics class. I had the same history teacher for all 3 years of middle school at Gunston, and he was very passionate about us kind of speaking our mind and sharing our opinions and being more critical of the world around us. So a lot of my friends also were in the same class, and we all kind of grew in that same classroom atmosphere. So we kind of all had this passion to learn more and just kind of be engaged in our community and help out. So I think when my real activism kind of started was after Parkland, like many of the youth you hear now. Was after Parkland, I organized with my friends, I believe 3 or 4 walkouts in my school. And we were able to work together at the school. We were able to organize a few on our own. And each time we were able to bring hundreds of students out. So that was kind of my first experience with activism. But Generation Ratify started when I was a freshman in high school. My friend of mine learned about the ERA just completely. It was an accident. She just saw something about ERA. And we both realized that no one in our generation, no one in our grade really knew what it was. And now having taken Gov, I know that it does not even come up. So that was kind of our spark to start Generation Ratify, was that there was such a critical issue that was going to affect us undoubtedly, especially as young women, but also generally towards everyone in our generation. And we did not even know it existed. We didn't even know that this was a problem that hadn't been addressed. We didn't really think about the absence of females and women and people beyond binary in the Constitution. So that was our initial spark to start Generation Ratify. But yeah, so kind of engaging our generation was one of our biggest goals, not necessarily to even elect anyone. And I think we do a lot of election stuff now, but it was more about educating people and making them aware of ERA and then kind of letting people form their own opinion on it. And I think that once people really understood what ERA is, they really did kind of understand that this was something that we needed. So that started our initial work. We started Generation Ratify about, I believe, late summer of last year. So we kind of worked all through fall. We did election stuff. We did a lot of relational networking. So we talked to our friends talked to their friends. We started Instagram for Generation Ratify. We followed similar groups in the area because it was originally just like a Northern Virginia thing. We followed other youth groups in Virginia. So there's like a March for Lives chapter. There are Black Lives Matter chapters. So that was kind of how we first kind of branded ourselves on social media. We found other similar groups and we associated ourselves with them. By doing that, we were able to kind of connect with their bases. We were able to connect our base to their base, and we were all kind of benefit from that. And we kept our kind of following on Instagram very particular to similar groups we believed in, groups that we felt shared our vision of like equality in general, if not the ERA. So that's how we did our kind of social media outreach. But again, we were so small then, so we had to do a lot of relational networking. Our friends, finding similar clubs in our high schools, like, hey, like this is a thing we're doing. We'd be interested. Come join us. So that was a lot of what the fall looked like for us. And we continued that all through January, February. ERA got passed in Virginia then. And then once we started building out chapters, COVID hit. And that was kind of the end of in-person organizing. For many people, not just obviously youth organizations, that was the end of a lot of things for people. So that was when we really had to take our social media activism to the next level. First, we have to be way more active on Instagram. We are posting multiple times a week now. We are always posting our stories. We have people take over. We reach out to well-known activists and have them come on our stories, and just generally try to keep people's attention on our issues and on the ERA. So that's kind of, it was a lot of what organizing during COVID looks like is getting people engaged. And I think generally that is the goal of social media, is to keep people engaged, keep them personally involved in your mission, and make sure that people see kind of your end goal and everyone kind of knows what the end goal is and they all understand and have that mutual goal. So during COVID, organizing was very, very difficult. So we had to kind of pioneer new ways to, campaign and work for other candidates. We had to phone bank and text bank and all that. And a lot of that we used to do in person. So getting people to do that at home alone, I'm not sure if anyone's ever phone banked before text bank. It is not the most exciting process, especially if you're getting like angry people on the other end of the line. So we have to kind of have people kind of join Microsoft Teams, like things like this, Google Meet, Zoom, and play music, and keep people engaged and just find new ways to use technology to replicate as much of the in-person experience as we could. So I think that our main goal with social media now during COVID, and kind of what we learned during COVID and now moving beyond that, is doing as much to replicate the in-person experience online. And I think that we also initially started our Instagram. It was, I think, it was still new to our community, I would say. So we didn't have, there were some people who weren't very much of a fan of the ERA or our group or whatever. So we get some interesting comments in our posts. And I think if they were completely like absurd and more like argumentative and just rude, we would just delete them. And that was kind of the end of that. But sometimes we did get, more like discussion questions, discussion topics in the beginning. And I think that it was really important to respond to those in what way we felt best. Obviously, we'd respond a few times to the comments and we just kind of have a chat and like during in the DMs. But I think that being open to other people's opinions is really important. When you're on social media, you follow people that have similar viewpoints to you, and you have people follow you that have similar viewpoints to you as well. So you kind of trap yourself in this bubble almost, and you aren't always exposed to the other side. So we really have to make an effort to be open to other things and be willing to communicate. And I think that one of the things that we've learned is that when you carry conversation over social media, you have to carry it as if you're talking to a person in person. So don't say something that you wouldn't say in person, and don't, and make sure you stand up for yourself as well, obviously. But remembering that there is someone at the end of the line and vice versa. So whether you are disagreeing with someone or agreeing with someone, making sure that you realize that you are both people and you're both learning and growing. And just because it seems like you're talking to like an AI doesn't mean you're talking to an AI. It is a person, it's not a bot. So that is, I think, one of the biggest takeaways from my experiences in social media. But to sum it all up, I was first sparked into activism after the Parkland shooting, and how I use social media is engaging people by being creative, by being consistent, and by branding myself in a way that I felt reflected my values, and then always carrying myself as if I was having conversations in person. So I knew kind of what the limits were and how to be polite and use that same politeness online as I would in the real world.
Wow, those are great lessons. So I want to invite our participants. Blaine said she's really trying to figure out how to operate as if she's in person in this very digital world that we're living in with, Microsoft Teams and Zoom meetings, and it's all virtual. So I want you to imagine that you're sitting in the lunchroom with Blaine. What would you want to know? What would you ask her about her experience? Anybody got any questions? Again, you can just shout them out, or you can put it into the chat, either way.
And I'm also monitoring the hand raising, so you all know where the hand raising is with the hand. You can always use that feature as well. And I believe Jimena's presentation is ready for us to be able to view as well whenever we get a chance.
Okay. Well, if we don't have any questions right away, we can circle back to that. But do you have something there, Aaron?
Yeah. Actually, Eric. Actually, Gabrielle had a question. She said,
"Please go ahead, please."
She wanted to know if we could repeat the question. Could you repeat the question, Lynn?
Oh, I was just saying that, one of Blaine's lessons that was really a good takeaway for me is how much energy you're putting into trying to make your interactions feel like they're in person, right? That we're living in this sort of distance digital time with COVID. So I wanted to kind of build on that and invite the participants on the call to pretend you're sitting in the lunchroom in the cafeteria with Blaine, and you're sitting down at a table. You want to ask her a question. What would you ask? What are you curious about her experience or anything else that she's learned? Or, I found myself thinking, like, what was the first thing that you did when you kind of decided you were going to do something? What was the first, do you remember what, like, the first step that you took?
Yeah, actually, Rosie and I met in a library when we first kind of decided that we want to pursue doing Generation Ratify, and we were very bold and we made a website. So that is our official launch date, is when we published our website. But for in-person organizing, we had a party-ish kind of thing on Gender Equality Day, which I believe is in August. And we kind of use it as an opportunity to invite people, have food, and just explain kind of what the ERA was to them and get them involved in our local chapters that we were starting.
So, I mean, I asked that question because there's no wrong way to start, right? You just have to start. You could start small, you could start bold, either way. So that's great. Eric, did you have a question?
I'm going to yield first to Gabrielle if she wants to go first, and then I'll come behind her if that's okay.
That's great. That's great. Thank you. Gabrielle, go ahead.
Is your mic on, Gabrielle? We can't hear you.
Yeah, okay. So I also put it in the chat, just, but I was going to ask, how did you deal with people, trying to say bad things about what you were trying to do to help the world? Because what you're doing sounds like a great thing. We need more people doing that. Because also, it's kind of good that you did it before anything happened, so you kind of had a head start. And like where we are right now in the world with the whole Black Lives Matter activists and rallies, like that's been here for a while. It just took people to be in a pandemic to actually realize that this was going on. But how did you deal with hate or anything with what you were doing?
I like to start saying that a lot of our ERA stuff has been on pause, and we're doing a lot more Black Lives Matter organizing than we've done ERA, just out of respect and just solidarity. But as for dealing with the negativity, so like I said, we did get a few interesting comments, mean comments at our initial Instagram post in our kind of early days. And what I didn't realize for a while was that those same people who comment on our Instagram, they would be in my math class and they wouldn't say anything to me. So, like I said, people would not carry themselves the same as they would in person. So people really aren't as bold as they are over social media. So yeah, I think that a lot of it just realizing is that people will act a little bit differently than they would in person online. So not to take it to heart. And I think you can tell when comments are argumentative versus just like generally curiosity and wanting to have like an honest discussion. So I think when you notice that something is more inflammatory than anything, then just to either delete it and move on and not just brush it off, not take it to heart. And like I said, a lot of people, if you met them in person, they would not say a thing to you. And even if they did, it would be much more of a watered down statement. So just keeping that in mind. So that was kind of what I learned a lot of freshman and sophomore year sophomore year, because that was all of the school year, was that a lot of these people, they'd still be in my classes. I would talk to them. I did not manage our social media personally after a while, so I didn't see the comments, but I would like get a comment like, hey, like that was a person who commented on Instagram. And I was like, oh, like interesting. I'm like, oh, okay, whatever. So I think that sometimes people do it also just for the fun of it. I think that a lot, because we're in high school, because we're in middle school, I think we're also forming our opinions. And I think that it is almost natural to kind of go through kind of every opinion, kind of experience every position on a subject before kind of settling on what you believe in. So I think that people are still just kind of figuring out what they believe in. So whether it be agreeing with me or disagreeing with me, I think people are just trying to feel everything out and kind of learn from themselves. So I don't think there's really no need to take it to heart, even though sometimes it might hurt a little bit. Just ignore it. Although that seems like very cliche, I think that is really the only thing you can do. Yeah, that's my answer to that.
Thanks, Ma. That's great. That was
Eric,
great.
did you have a question?
First,
I think you're on mute.
there we go. First of all, I want to commend you just on your great work and your leadership. And I'm glad that I'm meeting you now before you're on CNN Live. I know that's going to happen here shortly. I'll be one of your biggest fans. But I wanted to ask a quick question. How did you deal with getting a different perspective? Use the key word about your values. How did you get your personal values out there to your classmates and colleagues so people understood it wasn't about you, but it was more about your values?
Yeah, I think that it is hard to put your beliefs out there, especially when they might be semi-political. And I think that that's the case for anyone on anywhere on like the political spectrum. And I think that really the best thing you can do is to always present yourself in a very respectful way, but also staying honest to what you believe in. And it is difficult. But I think that because of the climate that we're in right now, it is very easy to start these conversations because it is something that's in the back of everyone's minds. So yeah, just kind of recognizing that everyone is kind of on the same page you are, whether they might have a different opinion on it, they're still thinking about a lot of the same issues that you are, whether it be Black Lives Matter, whether it be how, you know, the pandemic is being handled right now, whether it be a local issue. People are always thinking about it, and it's really easy to start conversation. I think that the best way to put yourself out there, though, I think, is to make sure you are in the appropriate place. I don't think that you should be starting conversations everywhere you can. That where you are makes yeah, and then social media, I think that you can probably put your opinion out there, whatever. That is generally what people do. They just kind of post what they feel. But always, I think that you never really know the whole story of everything. So just being open to everyone's opinion. And yeah, not being afraid to put yourself out there. I think that's the biggest thing. I think that a lot of people, after we started with, hey, like I always kind of thought this, I never really knew how to express it. So yeah, finding like-minded people, always being open to people who are not like-minded, and being ready for discussions, and always doing your own research, I think.
No, excellent answer. And you have a new fan. I'm going to join everything you're doing and support you.
Thank you.
So thanks. We had one more question for you, Blaine, and that was we can make it quick so we can get the rest of it. We'll try to move forward and get to the rest of everyone else that has something to speak about today. But the question was, how were you able to grow and spread Generation Ratify after steps? I'm getting a lot of feedback. Because everyone mute their microphones if we're not speaking? That'll help with the feedback. Thank you. Were you able to hear me?
I'm here.
Okay. So they want to know, how were you able to grow? How were you able to grow Generation Ratify after your initial steps?
Yeah, great question. Okay, that's a loaded one. So we initially started in Arlington. So like I don't think I said on this webinar, but a lot of Arlington students do know each other, whether or not you go to the same school. So doing a lot of that relational outreach, letting people know about what we do. And I'm not gonna lie, we didn't bribe people with Dunkin' Donuts to go on our campuses. So I think that getting people involved in person first, and kind of having them make that personal connection to your group and your work, allows them to just generally become more invested. And then always having easy ways or making your group very accessible to people. So whether it be following us on social media, whether it be having a local chapter near them, making it a club at their high school, that really does help with like getting people involved. So we initially started in all 3 high schools in Arlington. And then when we wanted to kind of grow into the rest of Virginia, we did a lot of emailing to high school clubs in Virginia. So that was a very, very long process. It was a little painful, but it was like it needed to happen for us to grow to the rest of Virginia. So we did a lot of emails, just saying, hey, this is what we are, this is what we do. We believe you might have similar values to us, similar goals. I think that we could either partner or start a chapter. So that's why we started like local chapters. But I think that in addition, we have to, like I said, kind of network again and brand ourselves. So we have to be involved in some more organizations and do things with some more organizations so we can put our name out there to their base. And a lot of that would come like word of mouth. So yeah, I think just making sure that you are involved with other organizations and doing a lot of direct outreach as well, and being accessible to many different people in many different ways. To sum it up.
Great questions. Great questions. So that's actually a great segue, Eric, to you and your work. You help student athletes and others build their brand, so people know who they are and what they stand for. Yeah. And a lot of that is obviously done through social media. But I'm wondering how you see branding connecting back to this question of individual values.
Sure.
In today's context, for the students, their family values. How does that all connect for you?
No, it's a great question. And similar to what we were just talking about, in doing work with athletes and just during this time right now, their values has to become real important. And to the young people that's on the call, they're people before they become student athletes, right? And so there was always a teacher or a counselor or a coach that had an impact in their lives. And I think a lot of times you're looking at different causes of things that are happening through social media. They become their own brand first before they sign any contract with a shoe endorsement, before they do any kind of hip hop video. That's not a brand. You know, you're becoming a part of a movement. And I think LeBron made reference to this, that the BLM aspect is not a movement, it's a lifestyle. And I think your brand becomes a lifestyle. So we were talking earlier about with working with athletes, is that if they weren't an athlete, would you be doing certain things? And so it's important also as a young person and also even as an educator is, what is your platform? And we just talked about this in the previous conversation, is that before you look at endorsement opportunities and sponsorship opportunities, what's your values? And so working with athletes, I help them understand who they are as a person first. Are they, a husband, a wife? They just happen to play for an NBA team or a WNBA team. But they also have to learn that they have to draw the line in the sand to believe in something outside of sports, and to believe in something that they've been brought up with from a morals and a value standpoint. And I think you've done an excellent job, Beline, is also again, but in terms of the work that you're doing. But in my work is before you get on that mic and before you get on Sports Center, before you do an interview, is that people understand who you are as a person. A lot of that also is impacting of who brought you up, who raised you. And so often in my work, it's very hard to change 18 years of biases of whoever raised you in a Zoom call, in an interview. You can only get a different perspective on that. And so I'm working with student athletes and professional athletes before they do commercials. Is this the right brand for you to be affiliated with? And who is the CEO, by the way, of TikTok? We know it's going to be Microsoft here shortly, but you have to do some research to make sure that this is a good match for what you're doing. And so often people don't do the research to find out who sits on the boards of Nike, who sits on the boards of Coca-Cola, who sits on the boards of Porsche, all these different brands that are out there for endorsements or Geico or whatever the case may be. And so you have to have a sense of ownership. And so the clients that I work with, I give them a sense of ownership to understand their branding aspects. So then I'll pause right there just to handle any kind of questions. But in working with athletes, they're no different than any of us. They just have a larger platform. I think the largest young lady who is on TikTok, and I'm saying, okay, how do you leverage that? How do you leverage 54 million people following you? And what are you leveraging and why they're following you? And so again, to the young people that are on the line, those are the things you have to look at is before you start liking a particular athlete, find out who they really are and what they stand for, and then let them know and hold them accountable, right, for what they said they were going to do and not just signing an autograph.
Yeah. Well, it's an awesome responsibility having that much influence and connection, right? I mean, that comes with responsibilities.
No, it does. And you're seeing that right now where a lot of the teams and individuals are taking, different stances as relates to social causes and what they believe in. And I think this was brought up before. They've always had that voice, but now they're actually acting. Mm-hmm. I think there's a difference too when professional athletes act on certain things, and not just because they play for the Lakers or the New York Knicks or whoever they're playing for, a soccer team, but they're stepping outside of that and just saying, as a husband and as a person, this is my belief. And I think you're going to see a lot more of that happening with this next generation of athletes coming up, is that they're really in tune with their values more so than how do I just get paid and get a paycheck. And I will say this in closing in this particular comment, that you never make enough money to be happy. The human nature is that if you got the latest, whatever it is, you always want the next model. And so invest in people and not in things, and they'll last a lot longer.
Yeah.
Thanks, sir. We actually have a question from Gregory Jones. Are you on mute, Gregory?
Yeah, he is a little camera shy. He wants me to ask the question. I'm his mom. He's an 8th grader at Gunston Middle School.
Go,
It's okay, Mom. Go ahead and dive in.
Okay.
I'm to come sit beside you.
So sit beside me, Greg. Okay, he's going to do it. I'm glad. First, he said, "Can you see him?" And we have our Black Lives Matter shirt on.
Okay.
But anyway, he wants me to ask the question. His dad has a band that is promoting Black Lives Matters and sending positive messages. We have like a picture of it. I don't know if you can see it. It has like victims' names on it and like I see no change and stop the systematic injustice. And his question is, how can he help his dad promote this on social media? And how can he, tell his dad a better way? He's riding around in the DMV and he gets a lot of people coming up. His dad lets people sign it. He signed it. Children have came up and their parents are educating them with it. And he wants to know how can he help his dad protest in this type of way.
So Yolandi, I want to turn to you. You haven't spoken yet. I want to be sure you get in, but I think you're the perfect person to answer this question.
Yeah, sure. And that's a good one. You should really be proud of your dad and the work that he's doing. That's really amazing. I think the best thing that he can be doing is being present, kind of similar to what Blaine said about just working with other groups. So being present where there are protests or things like that, so that, people can see this and have that conversation, like conversation starter thing. So I think that's a big way. In terms of helping him on social media, I think using your networks as a young person to really vocalize or amplify what he's doing. So, making sure to take pictures where he's at, taking videos where he's at, and just consistently putting it out there. Because one thing that you'll notice is like, if I'm posting or if Amina's posting, it hasn't got the same effect with like your age group as if Blaine is posting. So yeah, really vocalizing within your age group. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
No problem.
Thank you for asking that question, Gregory and Mom. So Yolandi, I want to come back to you a little bit, because in your role with Arlington for Justice, that's exactly what you're doing, right? You're trying to build that engagement. And I'm wondering, if you feel like you've learned other lessons. You obviously just shared some great ones just now in response to Greg's question.
Yeah.
But are there other things that you've learned also kind of in the Arlington context? Like, do some things work in Arlington or not work in Arlington from your experience?
Yeah. So I guess what I've learned is that people often look through the lens of their own lives. And that's kind of the definition of empathy, right? So putting yourself in somebody else's shoes. And I think there's a big struggle with that here in Arlington, especially when we have conversations like reallocating funding, taking it away from the police a little bit. When we're talking about removing SROs from schools, some people really struggle to see the other side of that argument, see the experiences that other people are having. And I've also had to kind of do that as well myself, especially when I'm talking to the police. So I've been in multiple meetings with the police chief, and it's always important for me to understand how the police think of things, how they make their decisions, but also what does their day-to-day look like. So, I have a session planned where I'm supposed to go to the police academy to do like a but like a citizen academy training. So basically training to be a police officer in a way, to understand like how they experience life, and also to do some ride-alongs with them to understand what that day-to-day looks like. That way we can really work together as a community and the police with the understanding of what their reality looks like. I think, some of the things we've been pushing for, like taking away money from the police and giving it towards mental health resources, not understanding that the police also need mental health resources, right? They're dealing with all of these instances every day that are high adrenaline moments. Imagine being on extreme high alert for 8 hours a day and pretty much having PTSD kind of symptoms and never getting any help for it. So kind of having to look at that other side and saying, hey, you know, maybe we should also be pushing for police officers to be having more mental health resources as well. So yeah, I think like for me, my journey really started with a feeling. I like that you asked in the beginning, what does activism start with? I think mine was starting with a feeling, just feeling like I was grieving. When Sandra Bland died, Philando Castile died, Breonna Taylor died, and all of those moments, every time that happened or happens, I just felt like I was grieving every single time and still feel like that. And it got to the point where I was like, you know, I can either just sit and grieve and do nothing, or I can do something about it. For 4 years, I did nothing about it up until like 2 months ago. Arlington for Justice is about 2 months old, by the way. So not like it's not super old organization, but the first thing that I wanted to do with that was to connect with other organizations that are doing this work as well. You know, we're not the first people on the block to want to do police reform. So Justice for Virginia, NAACP have been doing this work. So really connecting with those organizations to see how we can all kind of work together as a unified force to get change done pretty quickly. And I think I'm rambling here, so I'm gonna stop and see if there's any questions.
Well, I want to invite questions on this. I also want to get back to Jimena's.
Lynn, I think we lost you a little
I
bit.
think you're on mute.
Okay, she's back now. Yeah, she's on mute.
I think you're on mute, Lynn.
Lynn, you're on mute. There we go.
Sorry about that.
There we go.
So you all were just watching me ramble. Sorry. I don't know how it switched to mute. I hadn't touched it. But so I was just saying what I really admired about what you said was this bringing curiosity, sort of recognizing that you have strong feelings about something and realizing that other people not only probably do, but almost certainly do, and that those feelings may be different than yours, but your ability to understand those and work with those and communicate with people whose feelings may be different, you know, allows us to move towards a solution, right? And social media is one way of getting a feel for how other people are feeling. You know, following people who don't think the same way you do is actually an interesting way of understanding better another perspective. So thank you for bringing that forward. So were there any questions from our participants before we go back to Jimena? Okay, well, the other thing I said, but I think you probably didn't hear because I was on mute, is that if you do have questions and we don't get to them in this session, I'm just going to commit Aaron and me to making sure that we follow up with answers to those questions. Sorry about that, Aaron. I just never leave a question unanswered. So, but Jimena, I want to come back to you and kind of pick up where we had to drop off on what you were saying. Because we've just had this great example of what activism can look like, and you've got the numbers behind it. So let's go back where you were.
So yeah, so I mean, I think Daryl has the presentation. He's gonna show it, but the bottom line is that today we are in a very different situation as we were in the past in terms of activism of any kind because of the technology penetration that we have. So Daryl, if you want to present at any time. The numbers are pretty clear. The adoption of smartphones of any kind of phone in the U.S. now is 95% to 97% in Northern Africa. Basically, in the U.S.
Yeah, Daryl actually had to leave, and I'm having connectivity issues
Okay, no.
on my end.
Okay,
So
and so the in the U.S. 95 to 97% penetration of smartphones and digital natives, anyone under 18 today has 90% of the kids have phones. In Arlington, actually penetration is 100%. So basically, that little device that we have is extremely powerful, and the usage of it comes with a lot of responsibility. I know parents and for everyone worries a little bit about the doors that the internet opens for young people. I have a lot of actually faith that the young people know how to use the internet better than many others, and they understand the power that it has, also the dangers that it offers. So I think it's important to acknowledge that from the get-go, that we have technology access today we never had before, and young people are better prepared almost than anyone to use those devices and use them well. We just have to, provide you all with examples of what not to do generally, because that's normally when people make a mistake, normally is by accident. There are so many examples of young activists in the world today. A lot of the activists are using the technologies that we all know, from to, TikTok to Snap, and a little bit of Twitter, and some Reddit, and other tools in the protest. You saw a lot of downloading of encrypted apps and things like that. But you don't need to use very sophisticated technology to spread the word out there. In fact, activism in the way that we know it is not everything that you can do to make a difference. Today, the problems that we have in the world, a lot of them need solutions. So interest and engagement in science and technology, women getting into innovation and technology. We don't have enough women in this field. That's a really important way to make an impact. There are a lot of examples now in Arlington, for example, of young people trying to save the parks. Our national parks are getting really destroyed during COVID, and every weekend and evenings there are young people going there and cleaning them. There are a lot of artists that are sharing their art with people that need it, that are feeling depression right now. There are older kids. I know a couple of kids in Arlington Public Schools teaching small children, tutoring them, because parents need any help that they can right now. And there's somebody right now on the chat that is a poet that wrote something. So think that you do not need to be like everyone else. You do not need to participate in the way others do. You have a unique way about you. Nobody can nobody can do that better than you. And you have to own that and feel very strongly that that voice that you have, your personal story, your vision, your view of everything, your view of the world, your opinion, as you're forming your opinion right now, that you have that power within yourself. So don't feel, because sometimes we can be shy. Sometimes, look, I have an accent. I felt for a long time I was worried about saying anything because I didn't know if people will understand me. I felt very shy about that. And that we always feel insecure about something, all of us, and even people who are speaking publicly, or the leaders of a lot of these active protests or these movements, they are all also insecure about something too. Greta Thunberg, she actually had special needs since she was a child, and it was really hard for her to come out of that, and she went through very deep depression and anxiety for years, and still deals with that today. So what we see sometimes is all the glossy, and we glorify things that are not necessarily all that glamorous all the time. So own your story, know your story, form your opinion the best you can, read good sources, pick your friends well, but also pick your internet rooms better. Do not believe everything that is out there. A lot of fake news, and there are a lot of efforts on online that are not great. So I have a lot of so many positive thoughts about what youth can do. The youth are leading the way right now, and the future really is going to be much better because of them.
Great, great. So I want to just spring off of that. We just have a few minutes left. This has gone way too quickly. But I want to follow up and make an offer to our student participants. I'm involved with an organization called Arlington Independent Media, AIM or AIM. It's the parent organization for WERA, Radio Arlington, here in Arlington. And that's the station that carries my show. And I had never done radio until I got training at AIM. And AIM offers training for starting with students as young as 8 years old till 108 basically. And we have both public access television, streaming platforms, and the radio station. And so if there's something that you're feeling like, I have something I want to say here, there's an issue that's really important to me, I'd like to find a platform to really make my voice heard, I invite you to take a look at Arlington Independent Media and think about whether or not that's a place that you might want to pick up some skills and be able to raise your voice and share the things that are of interest to you. And you can start small. We do a lot of what are called public service ads, PSAs, that are just like 30, 60 seconds of calling people's attention to issues in the community, events in the community. And we're working with all kinds of people to record those. And if you think you'd be interested in helping to record some PSAs for something of interest to you, I want you to send me an email at choosetobecurious@gmail.com, and I will work with you to get you recorded to do PSAs about things that are going on in Arlington or that are of interest to you. And I want to give you some homework. After all, this is coming from Arlington Public Schools. You know there's going to be an assignment of some sort. We're curious to know if this session actually makes any kind of an impact. So in a week, next Wednesday, I'd like you to email us. You can email me at choosetobecurious@gmail.com, or you can email Aaron. I'm going to volunteer Aaron too, with an example of a social influencer. Eric talked a lot about the kinds of athletes and other people who are influencers on social media. And I want you to, who is this person? Identify who is this person? What makes them an influencer? Do you think they're using their influence in constructive and responsible ways? And why or why not? Like, what have you learned today that makes you kind of pay more attention to what's going on in social media and how people are using the platforms that they have? Because what you're doing is you're bringing your curiosity, you're bringing your critical analysis. You have the tools to make the assessments that Blaine talked about, right? About, are these the people who are amplifying messages that that I think are credible and useful? Are these the kind of people I want to engage and give the gift of my time and attention to? So we want to know kind of who you're watching, why you're watching them, whether or not you think they're doing a good job with the responsibility that they have, and just really curious to see what you do next. And then, you know, as Jimena said, and Yolandi too, you know, you might be the next influencer, right? You don't know that all of a sudden something is going to move you. Something was percolating for Yolandi for a couple of years, and then it was a feeling inside. She's like, I got to do something with this. And that's what we're looking for. We're looking for you to recognize where you feel like there's a kernel of a something. You don't have to be big and bold and huge to start. You just have to start. So figure out what matters to you, and then figure out who you bring along to amplify that message. So I want to thank you all for a great discussion. And Aaron, I want to give it back to you.
So thank you. Thanks for everyone that attended today. Today was really about you and hearing your voice and your message. And we want you to open this up to your friends. So this is the first of many conversations. Know that, social media, as long as it's used responsibly, can be a very good platform for student voice. But we have to be responsible. One of my mentors told me is that my brand and who it's not so much about who you know, but it's about who knows you. So increase your network. This helps you build your network. It helps you build your platform. One of the 5 C's for Virginia education is about citizenship. How are you going to be a responsible citizen? And how are you going to navigate and critically think to be able to be a productive member of society? Just as right now, I lost power to the home, so I had to come to the car. So you have to also think on your feet at times too, and be ready for anything. So I encourage you to, again, this is the first of many conversations. We're going to continue these talks until the school year. Think about virtual activities. Now is the time as we start back virtually. How can we continue these talks and these conversations and go deeper and do a deeper dive into the things that matter the most to you? So I'll open this up and allow you all to be curious, to, have your imagination. What social cause or what cause matters the most for you? As of right now, we're coming out of COVID-19 and we're trying to, figure out reopening schools and planning. What cause is important for you? How about doing a PSA and a public service announcement about how to keep students safe during this time as you're coming back to school? So we want to open up this platform for your voice to be heard, to know that we listen to you, we hear you, and that we're aware and that you all have something to say. So I want to thank our guests, Jimena, Eric Troy, Lynn Borton, Balan, and Yolande for coming on and sharing their truth with us today. So thank you, and everyone have a great day.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Take care.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Do
Thank
we
you,
pray?
students. Glad we're here.
Or do we leave here? Hello?